Greetings, comrades, and welcome to How the Red Was Won, a podcast about organizing in the South, Texas fascism, and how to fight back. I'm your host, Jen Big Nasty, and before we jump into this special edition episode, I just wanted to do a little housekeeping. So first of all, shout out to everyone who subscribes, and especially to my Patreon supporters, because of your support and because of the love I get for this project, I have upgraded my equipment. So this is my first recording using my new mic and the laptop and these sweet headphones. So do I know how to use all this equipment properly? No. Have I figured it out enough to hopefully record this episode properly? Yes. And I played around with it last night when the mic got delivered, and I think it already sounds better. So once I am able to take some time and learn some of this program stuff and get better at editing, I think it's going to go a lot more smoothly from now on. So thank you so much to everyone who listens and supports and shares and says nice things about this project. I really appreciate you. Another thing, this episode is going to come out on Tuesday, October 7th. It is a Palestine episode, so I feel like it was appropriate to have one come out that day. And I do usually drop episodes on Tuesdays, but moving forward, they're going to come out on Wednesdays now. It just makes better sense with my work schedule. I'll have more time to edit on Tuesdays to have everything ready for you guys on Wednesday. So, small change happening, not that big of a deal. So, why is a podcast that talks about organizing in the South having a Palestine episode? Well, I think that most people that listen to me and have similar politics to me understand, obviously, the interconnectedness among all of our struggles, right? The obvious things being that the surveillance and weapon systems that the U.S. sends to Israel, or that are made by Israeli companies, we share this technology. Our police go and train with the IDF, and, Israel is essentially just another arm of American imperialism. It started off more of British imperialism, but as that empire crumbled, the U.S. kind of took over that spot, and so they really are like our outpost there that we, it's a symbiotic relationship. We get a lot out of having them there testing these weapons on civilians, and they get tons and tons of money, not just weapons, but like aid in other ways from us as well. So obviously these things are connected. Texas, where I live, is an anti-BDS state. So technically BDS is illegal here. And entities, organizations can lose funding. They can get in trouble if they openly support the boycott, divest, and sanction movement. So all of our struggles are connected. We know this. So, when this episode comes out on Tuesday, October 7th, it will be the 2-year anniversary of the Al-Aqsa flood. An impressive act of defiance and a strike back at the occupiers, but it also, as we know, kind of kicked off this escalated genocide that's been happening not just in Gaza, but in all of Palestine, and in the greater region, right? Israel has taken every opportunity to attack everyone around them and try to expand their little colonial outpost. So I have this book. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see it right here. It's called Genocide Bad. Kind of a silly title. The subtitle is Notes on Palestine, Jewish History, and Collective Liberation, written by Sim Kern. This book actually came out this year. So it's very up to date with everything they're talking about and focused on the current ongoing genocide. My neighbor dropped this off at my house a couple of months ago, and I haven't read the entire thing, but I've been kind of grazing through it a little bit. And, as the title implies, right, it is genocide bad, right? Like an obvious statement. But the research done in here and the way that the author, again, Sim Kern, presents the information, it is just very, like, plain English. It's stated very simply. It's not bogged down in a lot of, I mean, we read Marx, right? Like, it doesn't sound like Karl Marx wrote it. It sounds like talking to somebody that somebody that is involved in these liberation movements. So I appreciate it when authors are able to, I don't even know if simplify is the right word, but just take it out of that academic language and make things very easy for people to understand, because things need to be, I guess simplified is the right word, right? People need things to be spelled out for them sometimes, and sometimes we just don't want to read Marx, right? Sometimes we want to read something that puts it in language that is just easy to digest. So I was looking through this book today, and there are 2 sections that I wanted to read from. Again, I haven't read the entire thing, but basically the main point of this book, there are 3 sections to it, but the biggest one is the second one, and it's about answering to Hasbara, right? It's about, the chapter titles are like, who are you to speak on Israel? Marginalized human shields. But Israel is so diverse. But the Holocaust. But Hamas. Like, so it's basically like how to combat the Hasbara, the propaganda, the Zionist mouthpieces that you see on TV and that the people in your life might listen to because they're not getting the other side of the story, maybe the true side of the story, because the Hasbara machine, it's good. They're good at what they do, right? And they've been very successful at it for such a long time. But, in the last 2 years, a lot of that has come crumbling down around them, and like that facade has been seen through, and kind of the spell is broken, right? So, 2 sections that I wanted to read from. Chapter 7, Won't Anyone Think of the Colonizers? And I might pause a few times here. You guys know how I read. I like to chit-chat. That's why I have a podcast. Short chapter, though, so here we go. Chapter 7, Won't Anyone Think of the Colonizers? Another derailing tactic, a cousin of, but Hamas, are comments to the effect of, won't anyone think of the colonizers? These comments sound something like, quote, but what will happen to Israelis if we give Palestinians the right to return? Or, if Israel doesn't defend itself, the Jews will be wiped out. Or, how would you protect the rights of Mizrahi Jews in a Palestinian state? End quote. These comments swap your focus on the safety of those who are currently experiencing genocide. And they ask you to focus instead on the safety of those doing the genociding. You were advocating for Palestinians one moment, and then the next you're asked to consider the well-being of their mass murderers, given some imaginary future inversion of the region's actual current power dynamics. Right? This is the whataboutisms. So how do we answer these whataboutisms? These commenters might ask you for a political plan for post-apartheid Palestine, and no amount of detail will appease them. It's okay to ignore this demand. Just like you don't need to be a PhD student of Palestinian history to speak against genocide in the present, you do not need to write a constitution for Palestine's hypothetical post-Israeli future in order to condemn apartheid happening right now. And if you don't live in Palestine, you probably shouldn't be writing their constitution anyway. That's also a good point. When someone asks you, what should the laws be? That's not your job as an American, right? That is for the Palestinians to decide, which is why self-determination is the demand. When someone says, won't anyone think of the colonizers? You might point out that this is the wrong question to ask during a time of genocide. You might tell the following story from U.S. history to illustrate your point. Prior to the U.S. Civil War, abolition was considered a radical ideology among white people, even in the North. The centrist position among white Northerners was that slavery was wrong and abhorrent, sure, but also that it was a necessary evil in order to preserve the economy, their own peace, and their racial privilege. According to historian David Williams in I Freed Myself, African American Emancipation in the Civil War Era, quote, neither rights for blacks nor emancipation for slaves were issues that most Northern whites cared to touch, end quote. Northerners feared free black Southerners moving north to take their jobs. And they also feared the violence that black enslaved people might unleash if they were suddenly freed. Surely, people who had been treated so violently would want to take violent revenge on their enslavers. These fears weren't entirely unfounded. There had been 250 slave uprisings involving 10 or more enslaved people attacking their enslavers during the antebellum period. There were countless more cases of individual enslaved people killing their enslaver and running off into the night. If all black enslaved people were suddenly freed, what would keep them from coming to the North, mass killing white people, and causing total mayhem? Won't anyone think of the enslavers? Lincoln himself was not an abolitionist. While he was opposed to slavery morally, he advocated ending slavery gradually, over the course of generations. Quote, gently as the dews of heaven, not rending or wrecking anything, end quote. That's actually disgusting. Generations is crazy slow. Okay. At the start of the war, he ensured enslavers in both the Union and Confederacy that he would continue to uphold the Fugitive Slave Act, vowing to capture any enslaved people who escaped north and return them to their enslavers. He often stated a goal of preserving both the Union and slavery. Lincoln only changed his mind after black Southerners began freeing themselves en masse, abandoning and revolting against their enslavers, destroying cotton fields, claiming land for themselves, and crossing Union lines by the thousands. Under such conditions, enforcing the Fugitive Slave Act became impossible and a costly use of Northern resources. Meanwhile, massive casualties and dwindling enlistment were threatening the longevity of the Union Army. So Lincoln passed the Emancipation Proclamation, but only when he believed it had become strategically necessary to allow black people who had already emancipated themselves to become Union soldiers. 3 years after the outbreak of the Civil War. So, they just needed more soldiers. That's why. People give Lincoln way too much credit. He does not fucking deserve any of it. Okay. Williams explains that emancipation was deeply unpopular among white Northerners. Outrage over the proclamation fueled major electoral losses by the Republican Party, Lincoln's party, in the midterm elections, and thousands of white Union soldiers deserted. In response, Lincoln passed a draft act, which led to riots, quote, fueled by white animosity toward being forced to fight in abolition war, end quote. So, we get this, whitewashed, pretty version of the Civil War, and a lot of these people were not ideologically against slavery. White Northerners justified their opposition to emancipation with tales of Negro outrages, including the murder and rape of white people. But in fact, black refugees from the South were the ones at most risk of violence. In July 1863, white New Yorkers went on a week-long rampage in which they beat, burned, tortured, and killed as many blacks as they could lay their hands on in the city. Those New Yorkers. That's not the South. The tens of thousands of black soldiers who enlisted in the Union Army following the Emancipation Proclamation proved essential to victory. Though they were paid less than and treated abominably by their fellow white soldiers, black regiments were praised for their greater bravery, discipline, and steadfastness in combat. Yeah, they actually had something to fight for. However, after the war was over, the fear of black violence against their enslavers remained in the white imagination. But it wasn't black people who formed a paramilitary to terrorize another race. That was white folks creating the Ku Klux Klan. It was not black people who would kill thousands of people as a spectator sport. That was white folks forming lynch mobs. The people who have been doing terrible violence all along are the people most likely to continue doing terrible violence. Violence is a habit. Once again, every accusation is a confession. So, asking, if we free Palestine, what will become of Israelis, follows the same logic as Northern liberals in the Civil War era asking, if we free black people, what will become of white people? It's the wrong question to ask. History teaches us that on the first day that Palestinian liberation is achieved in a post-Israeli society, our top concern should still be, how do we keep Palestinians safe from Israelis? How will we keep Palestinians safe from the former Israeli police, the former IOF, and violent settlers who have been terrorizing them for generations? It is exactly right. We also know from South African history that you can end legal apartheid and not make a dent in economic apartheid. Even if Israelis give back every acre of Palestinian land they have stolen over the last 75 years, economic apartheid would persist in Palestine. Because, historically, most Palestinians made their living through agriculture, and Israeli development and land mismanagement has devastated much of the region's arable land. I mean, we've seen videos of them demolishing olive orchards, right? They do not give a shit. They pour cement down people's wells. Settlers do not care about the land. So when asked, once Palestine is free, what happens to the colonizers? Remind whoever's asking that anti-colonial history teaches us that a more urgent question is, once Palestine is free, what happens to Palestinians? Now, it is possible that people who have been violently oppressed will become violent oppressors in return. Of course it is. Just look what's happening within the nation-state of Israel. Descendants of the victims of the Holocaust are carrying out a new Holocaust in Gaza. Such a reversal has only been possible, though, because the Jews who colonized Palestine never, in fact, freed themselves from white supremacy or anti-Jewish hate or imperialism. They just negotiated a different role for themselves within empire. European Jewish immigrants could never have colonized Palestine if they were not gifted a shitload of guns and tanks and bombs from the UK and the US. The US and the UK gave them those weapons in order to sabotage the formation of a unified Arab kingdom and protect Western economic interests in the Middle East. And those tanks came with strings attached. Israelis are not free. They are trapped within an ever-accelerating cycle of violence that they must perpetuate to keep their supremacy intact. All of their children are forced to serve in the IOF and become killers. Compulsory military service is not a hallmark of a free society. Israeli media is some of the most heavily censored on earth to prevent any non-Zionist liberatory ideas from getting through to its citizens. Even the most tepid criticism of the government within Israel is met with brutal violence, arrests, and suppression. It's Israelis who live trapped within the barbed wire cages they erect to keep Palestinians out of their settlements in the West Bank. So, Israelis are not Jews who got free from empire. They're Jews who became the foot soldiers of empire. Could Palestinians fall into the same pattern? Sure. Could another imperial power, one that wanted to fight a proxy war with the US, decide to give Palestinians the kind of military arsenal they would need to defeat Israel? Maybe. Setting aside that such a proxy war could go nuclear and destroy all life on Earth, let's say Russia did that. And let's say, given such an arsenal, some Palestinians founded a Muslim supremacist apartheid state and began ethnically cleansing Jews who had been born and raised in Israel. In that highly unlikely hypothetical scenario, Palestine would not be free. It would have become part of empire. Palestinians would be behaving just like the colonizers they despise. And I'm operating under the assumption that the Free Palestine movement is thoroughly anti-colonial. No one I know personally, when chanting, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free," has such an outcome in mind. Now, online, I have certainly encountered some hateful, revenge-minded people who entertain fantasies of reverse genocide, but they are few and far between, and some of them may even be Hasbro sock puppets, deliberately stoking Jewish fears of another Holocaust should the Zionist state fail. The vast majority of those hundreds of thousands of people worldwide who have campaigned and protested over the past year for Palestine did not do so because they are dreaming about violence against Jews. They are dreaming of an end to such violence. So when someone asks you, "Won't anyone think of the colonizers?" you can go ahead and reassure them that it's genocide bad, always, for everyone, even for colonizers in hypothetical futures. But then you should direct their focus from future hypotheticals to the very real and very bloody present, saying, "But now we're going to keep thinking of the colonized. Thank you very much." Okay, that was chapter 7. So, see what I mean? Like, there's like swearing in there, and it's cute. It's cute. Let's see. This author, USA Today, best-selling author, Free People's Village, Indie Next Pick, journalist, book influencer, and anti-Zionist Jewish activist. They use they, them pronouns. Okay, that's what I was looking for. Because I couldn't tell what the name Sim, I don't know that name. They're a they. They're a they. Cool. Okay. Just wanted to get that straight. And then the other thing I wanted to read was this. It's at the very end before, like the acknowledgments and the end notes and stuff. It is also very well cited. All of those like numbers and figures I gave and quotes are all cited. So if you read this book, you can find all that in the end. Let's end on a really sad note. The last thing in here is notes from the families of babies born during the genocide in Gaza. So over the last 2 years, I'm not exactly sure when this book came out, but again, it did come out earlier this year. So it's very current, but as we know, people are being murdered every day in Gaza. So, and this isn't a list. This is literally like stories from parents and like family members. Okay, so it's not fun. This is not a fun section. In February of 2024, I gave birth via C-section in a clean, state-of-the-art hospital that was not being bombed or besieged by a genocidal army. I was acutely aware that the same was not true for those giving birth in Gaza. I felt no pain during this major surgery, as I was on an epidural, and my pain was minimized throughout my ensuring recovery with powerful drugs. Meanwhile, pregnant people in Gaza were undergoing C-sections in tents and field hospitals, without any pain relief whatsoever. I had hot showers, clean sheets, a warm bed, and a roof over my head as I recovered. Postpartum mothers in Gaza were sleeping on rubble, in the streets, beneath tarps, or in tents pitched on wet sand. I had a bassinet, diapers, wipes, warm running water, a swing, changing table, nursing pillow. and a dozen cute outfits with which to welcome my baby into the world with softness and bright colors. Parents in Gaza had rubble and screaming mortars and the whine of armed drones. I knew these parents loved their babies every bit as much as I loved mine. Their babies were every bit as deserving of gentleness, safety, warmth, and care. Their babies also beheld the wonder of the cosmos when they first opened their eyes, and they could light up the coldest hearts with their smiles. I wanted more than anything to help these babies. So 2 weeks after my kid was born, I started fundraising for pregnant and postpartum women in Gaza. I used a random number generator to select a family to support off a spreadsheet of such fundraisers. Each of these families was trying to raise tens of thousands of dollars in bribes that they would need to give to Egyptian officials in order to evacuate Gaza through the Rafah crossing. My followers, my incredible, I don't know this word, misfocha? I don't know, friends, raised over $500,000 for these families, but only one family was able to evacuate in time. Thanks to their generous donations, baby Farah was born in a hospital in Egypt, but for the rest, Israel closed the Rafah crossing before they could evacuate. I have been able to stay in touch with some of the families I fundraised for. The money we raised for them has allowed them to buy tents, food, diapers, and other necessities from markets in Gaza. Because, yes, capitalism endures even amid genocide. But I cannot make Israel open the borders to allow in humanitarian aid. I can't help them buy the medicine and food and supplies that don't get through. So for this book, I wanted to hand the mic over to some of these parents and close out by letting them speak directly to you, my English-speaking audience. I hope their words will ground you, fuel you, and deepen your commitment to ending genocide. My voice is like, I went to a rally today. I tried not to yell too much. Okay, this is the first one. Elena. Elena was born June 8th, 2024, in Gaza to parents Nevin and Wasim. The following was written by her father, Wasim Mohammed Mid. When any war starts, our children become the weakest point affected by hostilities, falling within the sights of countless dangers and deprived of the most beautiful years of childhood. Therefore, the protection of children is important, without a doubt. Our children are the present and the future. They must enjoy a decent life like your children. They have been deprived of everything. It is enough that their lives have been robbed. So all we wish is that we as parents and the whole world can help our children get out into a safe life and a bright future soon and away from any wars. Please save us before it's too late. Manal. Manal Matar was born in Al-Aqsa Hospital in July 2024 to mother Manar and father Muhammad. Tragically, Manal did not survive the first night of her life. Israeli forces heavily bombed the area near the Matar family's tent, and baby Manal's heart could not take the terrifying sounds of the explosions. She died of a heart attack, not 1 day old. Manal's aunt, Noor, wrote this message for you. We were living a safe life in Gaza, in our beautiful home. My children were living their innocent childhood until this brutal aggression came to reverse all the scales. Our home was bombed, our lives were displaced, and our childhood was killed. Life has become impossible. We have lost even the glimmer of hope in the new generation. What is the fault of these children in this displacement? What is the fault of Manar, who endured all the hardships of pregnancy in these circumstances and that did not survive with her baby? What is the fault of the baby, Manal, who was killed before she saw the light? Sorry. I want to address my speech to the whole world. Stop the aggression against Gaza. We have the right to live like all people. Leave us to continue our dreams. And then this is the longest one. Heba. I already introduced you to Heba's family in chapter 6. Heba was born to Mom Shad and Dad Muhammad on March 2nd, 2024 at Al-Awda. Sorry, my Arabic is not good. Clinical and Social Center, Nazareth. The following letter was written by her mother, Shad J. I'm not going to try to pronounce her last name. Speaking as the voice of baby Heba. So her mom wrote this as the child. I read this earlier and it's a lot. Okay. I watched the world unfold from a tiny corner of my heart, cradled in the warmth of my mother's love. My name is Heba, and I came into existence during a time overshadowed by chaos. Yet within me burned a quiet dream, a yearning for peace and a life filled with hope. It all began with a moment of pure joy when my mother discovered she was pregnant with me. That news ignited a spark in her heart, and she began weaving a tapestry of dreams. She envisioned a home that was not just a shelter, but a kingdom filled with laughter and warmth. I can picture her excitement as she planned my nursery, decorated in soft pastels with cozy blankets, each detail crafted with love. She dreamt of how she would welcome me, surrounded by family and friends who would celebrate my arrival with open arms. But as life often teaches us, dreams do not always materialize as expected. The morning of October 7th shattered our peaceful aspirations. The world outside turned into a cacophony of terror, and the sounds of bombs echoing through the streets. I felt my mother's body tremble, her heart racing with fear. This would become my first memory. An imprint of chaos shadowed by the warmth of her love, holding me close as if to shield me from the world's horrors. As the days turned into weeks, circumstances forced my family to move from one place to another. Every time they found a semblance of safety, the threat would loom again, sending us fleeing into the unknown. We lived in a tent, a fragile barrier against the elements, where the cold air seeped through every crack. Yet my parents worked tirelessly to make it feel like home. They gathered the scraps of fabric to create a small corner for me, a sanctuary filled with hopes and dreams. The day of my birth arrived amidst the turmoil. As we rushed to the hospital, the streets felt deserted, the sounds of conflict echoing all around. The hospital itself was dimly lit, filled with the cries of others seeking refuge from pain. My father spent that night on the hospital floor, anxiously waiting outside my mother's room, where helicopters circled above and bombs shook the building. His presence was a testament to his love and devotion, even in the face of fear and uncertainty. My father, a steadfast pillar of strength, had always been the one to shield us from despair. He worked tirelessly, often taking on multiple jobs just to ensure we had enough to eat. In those uncertain days, his determination shone brighter than ever. He would venture out into the chaos, risking his safety to find food and essentials, often returning with little more than scraps, but he always wore a smile, determined to protect our spirits. When I entered this world, cradled in my mother's arms, I felt a surge of hope. In that moment, I was part of something greater, a symbol of resilience against the backdrop of despair. My father was right there, his eyes filled with tears of joy and pride, reflecting a love that could conquer any storm. As I grew, I began to grasp the harsh realities of our existence. Explosions echoed in the distance, and I could see the fear in my mother's eyes every time the ground shook beneath us. Yet, through it all, she never wavered. She often told me I was the reason for her strength, a beacon of light in the darkest days. She taught me that love could transcend any challenge, and that hope could flourish even amidst chaos. My father played a crucial role in shaping my understanding of courage. I remember the nights when fear would creep in, and my mother would hold me tightly, whispering words of reassurance. But it was my father who would sit with us, recounting stories of bravery and resilience, instilling in me a sense of strength. He would speak of our ancestors who faced adversities yet persevered, reminding us that we carried their legacy with us. Now, at 7 months old, I find myself in a cramped room we share with other families. It's a small space filled with the laughter and cries of children. Yet it's also a reminder of our struggles. I see my father's efforts to secure food and basic necessities, his determination unwavering, even in the face of scarcity. He searches for nourishment, not just for me, but for our dreams of a better future. The small room we share is a testament to our resilience. Though it is cramped, it is filled with love. My father often plays with me, making silly faces to elicit my laughter. His smile, a reminder that joy can exist even in the direst of circumstances. He would say, "Heba, as long as we have each other, we can withstand anything." His words resonated in the air, filling our tiny space with warmth. But challenges persisted. I saw the toll that the ongoing conflict took on my father. His face, once bright and full of hope, began to show signs of weariness. The weight of responsibility rested heavily on his shoulders, yet he never let it dim his spirit. He would stay up late into the night, planning for our future, imagining a day when we could live freely, without fear. I dream of a day when peace will blossom, when we can live as everyone deserves to live, free from fear, in a world where laughter reigns. I long for the moment when my parents' dreams will finally come to fruition, when they can watch me grow without the shadow of conflict looming overhead. As I continue to grow, I will learn to tell my story. I will speak of the resilience that blossoms in the darkest of times, the love that nurtures us amidst chaos, and the unwavering hope that flickers like a candle in the night. One day, I will share my journey with others, not just to recount the hardships, but to inspire strength and courage. My father often speaks of hope as if it were a living thing, something we must nurture and protect. He tells me stories of gardens blooming after harsh winters, drawing parallels to our own lives. We too will bloom, he reassures me, as long as we hold on to hope. For now, I remain a small child, cocooned in my parents' dreams, hopeful for a future where love conquers all, and where our story unfolds with the promise of brighter tomorrows. I envision a day when my father can stand tall without the burdens of fear, and my mother can smile without worry. And as I grow, I will remember the sacrifices they made, the love they poured into every moment, and the strength they showed in the face of adversity. Together, we will write a new chapter in our story, a chapter filled with peace, joy, and the unwavering belief that love can overcome anything. And that's how the book ends, which is sad but positive. Which is kind of how everything is around this, right? Sad, but we have to hold on to hope, right? So, as it is the 2-year anniversary of the escalation of this genocide, because it's been going on for 75 plus years, 100 years. I do recommend The 100 Years' War on Palestine. by Rashid Khalidi. This is a great book. It is just literally like a history of the region. 1917 to 2017 is what it says here. So, yeah, I think that it's good to have a reflective day for this, to think about what, most of my listeners are American, what responsibility we bear as Americans, as taxpayers, as voters. And I'm quite aware that we have very little to no control over what our government does. But that doesn't mean that we don't still have blood on our hands, right? Because we do. And there are things we can do, like I think it's important, again, especially today, to if you donate, obviously, to Palestinians. If you're going to buy a kafia, right, make sure that you buy it from a Palestinian. Make sure that you're sharing people's GoFundMes and donating if you can. Make sure that you're speaking up, that you're pushing back against Hasbara whenever you can, that you're boldly and loudly calling out the government and calling it a genocide, and speaking up, because this is so important, right? I went to a rally today, and it was good. It's good to just be out with people that care. There are probably about 300 people out in the streets of Austin today. And I have criticisms over the ways that we protest here. I'm recording this on Sunday, October 5th. So, when the flotilla, when everybody got kidnapped and they're like beating up Greta Thunberg, and they took all those like 500 people into Israel and into prisons. Italy immediately like called a general strike, right? I have a friend that's visiting right now, and he's like, the trains aren't running, the buses aren't running, like everything is shut down. And it's very cool that they're able to just do that. That enough people, first of all, enough people care, and that they're organized enough to make that call, and then everybody steps up and like takes to the streets and doesn't go to work and shuts everything down. There's obviously reasons we don't do that here. The biggest one, I think, being, especially in like right to work states, and our insurance is tied to our jobs, and if we were to lose our jobs, people would lose their health care. People have kids, they can't do that. But things are going to keep getting worse here before they can get better. And so we are rapidly approaching that tipping point to where people will not give a fuck if they lose their job, right? Because things are already that bad, because the alternative is worse, right? And I think a lot of people are at that point, but not enough yet. But again, we are getting there. And the energy today at that rally was good. It's great to take to the streets. It's great to make noise. It's great to let your voice be heard. I think it would be more impactful on a work day, when we shut down people's commutes, when we are yelling in front of offices of places that support genocide. There's something called Capital Factory. I didn't even know about this. I've been reading about it a little bit since then. They hosted like a tech thing that has like Palantir and just like the most evil companies, the surveillance companies, the Raytheons of the world, like it's great to get out there and yell at those buildings. It's better if there's people in there. But again, I get it. I understand why Americans have to protest on the weekend. It's unfortunate. But things are getting worse. The contradictions are sharpening, you could say. And I think that, you look at polling, and young people are real fed up with this imperialism bullshit. And we are reaching that tipping point rapidly. So, again, things you can do: donate, share, those things, participate in BDS, right? Don't buy things that are from Israeli companies, obviously, is a big one. But then there's other things like McDonald's is on that list. Disney Plus is on that list. So there are also American companies that actively work with Israel and work with the IOF, that we can also boycott as well. So things like that are great. And then organize, right? Join a union and then make that union more radical than it is, because that's also a problem with American unions, is that they often capitulate to capital in ways that directly and maybe immediately benefit that specific sect of worker, because they lack the like solidarity idea, right? They're not fully on board with the workers of the world part yet. So join a union and then make it better. Engage in mutual aid. That's obviously the one that I gravitate towards myself. I am in a union, but I don't have coworkers, so it's weird for me, right? But I do try my damnedest to radicalize everybody in my life. And so those are the things we can do, right? Just keep talking about it. Like, don't shut up. Do not shut up. The flotilla folks are asking us to call our representatives, and I don't usually do that anymore. I feel like calling Ted Cruz's office does nothing for me. But if you do have a senator or representative that's a little more less fascist than Ted Cruz, I don't know, like, might listen. I know generally blanket they don't, but there are, they take note of people that call. And that's what the flotilla is asking us to do, so you can do that for sure. But yeah, as always, free Palestine from the river to the motherfucking sea. Yeah, have an introspective October 7th. Thanks for listening. Cheers, y'all.